Rare T-54 and T-55 tanks, mass-produced from 1948 to 1979, have reappeared in Russian frontline casualty statistics. This may indicate a desire by Russians to conserve their newer vehicles, sacrificing older ones. This was reported on the social network X by open-source intelligence analyst Richard Vereker. According to his calculations, over the past 3 months, the Russians have lost a total of 88 tanks, 22 of which were of an unspecified type. Of the remaining 66 tanks, 4 were T-54 and 55s. While this is a small number in comparison to the overall loss, it is still a significant increase, as the Russians have lost only 15 such vehicles since the beginning of the war. Vereker dismisses the idea that these tanks could have been used as indirect fire artillery. Firstly, their gun elevation is too low, limiting their firing range. Secondly, these tanks have a relatively weak 100 mm caliber gun, making it less than ideal for artillery. Thirdly, these tanks are too old, so their accuracy at significant distances would be terrible. The analyst noted that Russia recently used T-54 and T-55 tanks to train new tank crews at tank schools, which freed up new tanks for frontline use. However, Vereker suggests that approach has now been reversed. We may now be seeing an increase in T-54 and 55 losses at the front, as Russia has replaced them deploying modern tanks to schools to preserve them, and sending the older ones to the battlefield, where their loss is less significant, the analyst suggests. Autumn rains are forcing Russian occupiers to switch from light vehicles to tracked armor. This will impact the pace of the Russian offensive, especially in winter, writes military observer Alexander Kovalenko on his Telegram channel. The rainy season in the war zone will force more and more Russian occupiers to switch from light vehicles to mechanized combat vehicles. The Goose. You can't storm the front lines on motorcycles, electric scooters, or on foot, like you could in the summer, he writes. Kovalenko emphasizes that the transition to tracked vehicles occurs not only during assault operations, but also in matters of logistics. The situation won't improve in winter. This all suggests that the Russian occupiers will slow down their offensive, even stagnate in certain areas, and any attempt to intensify it will lead to increased losses of equipment and personnel, the analyst states. As reported, since the beginning of 2025, Russia's losses on the front have amounted to approximately 100,000 killed. Meanwhile, the scale of advances has remained as minimal as in previous years. According to analysts, this year the ratio of losses between the Ukrainian armed forces and the Russian army has been at least 1 to 5, if not more.
The Ukrainian Navy destroyed a Russian naval drone. This is the first such incident to be publicly reported. A unit of the Ukrainian naval forces detected an enemy unmanned naval craft in Ukrainian territorial waters in an area close to a civilian shipping route. Thanks to the coordinated actions of the Ukrainian Navy and the main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, the enemy target was quickly destroyed, the military said in a statement. The Navy press service also released a video of the drone's destruction. The military analysis portal Defense Express examined the released video and concluded that it is a new type of unmanned aerial vehicle, previously unseen. This is particularly evident in the distinctive superstructure at the rear of the unmanned boat, which likely houses a camera and communications systems. Disregarding the superstructure, it's a deck. It's quite flat. The drone is likely not large, although it's difficult to determine from the available footage. Judging by the rather powerful explosion, the drone was armed with a warhead, the publication writes. Experts also noted that before being destroyed, the drone was simply standing in one place. It's possible it was waiting for its target, or it simply malfunctioned. It's also possible it was targeted by electronic warfare systems, analysts note. According to analysts, the emergence of a new naval drone model, especially given the recent downing of the Ukrainian ship Simferopol in the Danube, indicates that the Russians are continuing to actively develop this type of weapon. However, the main problem for them is the lack of their own equivalent of the Starlink satellite communication system, which Ukrainian naval drones rely on. For Ukraine, this is a signal of the need to protect the entire port infrastructure, for example, with electronic warfare systems and boom barriers. It also highlights the need for means to detect and counter these drones, which are still far from the shore, Defense Express noted. As reported in late August, a Russian naval drone struck the Ukrainian reconnaissance boat Simferopol, which was stationed in a branch of the Danube estuary. Several sailors were injured and at least 2 were killed. Ukrainian officials have never publicly confirmed that the ship sank as a result of this attack, but the overall context of the statements suggests so. Military experts call this episode a new level of confrontation at sea. The fact is that certain predictions by military analysts and military engineers, unfortunately, has come true. That is, the enemy has reached a certain point where it has demonstrated in practice that it can use even. Serhiy Bratchuk, a representative of the Ukrainian Volunteer Army, said, "According to him, Ukraine needs to counter what we have and work ahead of the curve. I want to emphasize that I believe we've reached a new level of confrontation in the Russian Black Sea at this juncture. We can't lose, and we won't lose the gains we've made." Moreover, the Ministry of Defense's main intelligence directorate has demonstrated that we have something to show for it again. We're attacking in the Sea of Azov. And today, and I emphasize today, it's an internal sea of the Russian Federation, Bratchuk emphasized. He explained that by attacking Russian ships in the Sea of Azov, the defense forces managed to overcome the obstacles and various barriers erected by the occupiers for protection. And in this context, the speaker noted, Novorossiysk, where the main units of the Russian Black Sea Fleet are currently based, looks interesting.